Oh, that was the end of it. There we go. All right, everybody, it is 10:57. We are still waiting for Dr. Scoville, but that doesn't mean we can't entertain him, right, Kelly? So let's throw out some of the questions. I'd be curious to know if anyone's got questions. But, there's been a lot of content in the last two sessions related to generations, and like all this stuff just kind of ties together and it's starting to gel and make more sense. And, part of this foundation in wellness really started with like the recruitment process, right? So it's like you got to get them in the door before you can actually even work to keep them with your program. And so recruiting staff is more challenging than ever for a variety of reasons. But I think beginning to lay the foundation with your staff about expectations. Dr. Michaels talked about that values component, right? Those values drops in the bucket. And so one is when you can lay the groundwork in the recruitment side of it, when you begin to start talking with staff about what it is that your organization does. But this is where I would start to engage the staff who really love working with you as to why they are there, right? Get some of that direct quote, get them involved in that process. I mean, I think anytime that you can work with staff to provide that kind of experience and provide that kind of perspective, just it's really genuine. And this is, Gen Zers in particular are genuine in terms of what they want to know and transparent in what they want to understand. I remember back, so I think I said earlier in the first session, when I went back to camp, so I worked in camp for about 9 years, and then I worked for ACA for about 6, and then I went back to camp in 2006, and that's when I was seeing these generational differences. And at that time, Dr. Jean Twenge out of the University of San Diego State University, had written a book on basically wasn't Generations at Work. No, Generation Me is how she titled her book. This was the millennial generation, and so some of you kind of fall into that, but it was all about, and I was trying to figure out, I was seeing this disconnect and I couldn't figure it out. And I ended up doing a training with Dr. Twenge out in Southern California because she came in as the expert in the content. And I said, what does this mean for camp? And so I'm curious to know, and you can throw these in the chat, based on the presentations you've had this morning, I'm curious to know what is it, right? Because Kelly and I can give perspectives, and Lindsay can give perspectives, and Dr. Michaels and those types of things. But what's your takeaway today? What are 1 to 3 takeaways, or just even one takeaway you have of like something you're going to implement coming up this coming summer, both in the recruitment side as well as you begin to think about staff training? That's all part of the recruitment retention process. Is that onboarding, the staff training we are doing, how we establish those moments in staff training, and then how you work that through your program over the course of the summer. But I'm curious to see from you all, like, what's a takeaway for you? I think that's helpful. Kelly, I know, you and I both don't work necessarily in direct service anymore. What's your takeaway? I know you got one.
Oh my
I'm picking on you.
Well, one thing I would love to have asked Dr. Michaels, and maybe this is a conversation for the whole group, but I think about the conversation about like kind of owning the worrying part, right? And the anxious part. And, asking that question, like, is it appropriate to ask during an interview or even pre, like, what is your worry about, applying for this position? What are your concerns? What would you be anxious about? So could we connect that with other staff members to say, if they say they would be, I'm anxious about, the question that came up in the chat, like, yes, I have vacation, yes, I get PTO, but like, if I do have a mental health moment where I just need like 20 minutes, like, can that actually be accomplished? Or, what happens if we do have, like, I had parents who were, my father was in a nursing home, and there would be days where they're like, you have to come now. And it's like, and you have an employer that tells you, no, you can't do that. Like, how do you balance that whole world? Because obviously, are you going to walk away from a job that you have for the summer to take care of your family? Well, yeah, you probably are, right? And we have to understand that. So, like, is there like a little bit, can we pull that stuff pre-interview or while we're going through the process, or check in? So, like, is that reasonable to say, like, can we ask these questions and can we answer them truthfully? Like, no, we can't do it because of our ratios, we can slot it into days because we have to be intentional about it. But the reality is I can't just have you leave. But like if you're in crisis, or if you have a moment, or you have a kiddo that needs to have a break, is there a signal to like tap out and I need 20 minutes? Because we've all been with kiddos that have had, like, I got punched in the face by a kindergartner, right? And it wasn't because I was in their space. But it was like kind of stepping back. I was like, what can I do? What do you need right now? And he just went whoosh and got up. I don't know how he did it so fast, but he punched me in the face. And I just was like, I like looked at my fellow staff member, and I was just like, and she just went, I got you. And I went, okay. I gotta go to the bathroom and have a good cry. I mean, right? But like, those little things. So we had, like, are we intentional about how like we communicate with each other? So I don't know. That was just one of the takeaways that I thought about that part about making sure that the staff know, like, we are aware and we're conscious of this stuff, but we're also trying to figure it all out as well. So
Yeah. No, and I appreciate that. I mean, I remember, I would always talk to my staff going, look, if you're going to lose it in front of a kid, like if you're getting to that point, you need to walk away, but walk away to a point where you get somebody in there so that kids are constantly supervised, right? There are ways to build those pieces in, and working with kids is frustrating, and it's not always, Kelly, you're using a physical example, and I know that we've all been there with kids in some way, but kids are really good at pushing buttons because they like to see your reaction. One, they're trying to set their boundaries, and two, they're trying to see how you're going to react to a situation. Or are you going to call them on it? What are they going to get away with? But we can continue that conversation at some point.
I know. I was just saying, there's a great comment from Heather, so make sure everyone takes a look at that. And don't forget, it's not just your kids that will push your buttons. It is also your staff that know how to push everybody else's buttons. So,
and sometimes parents. Sometimes parents get in there too. Yeah, super. Hey, Sally, it is great to see you. We want to give you a moment to get set, but if you want to start sharing your screen, I'll do a brief introduction if you're good with that.
Absolutely. And I apologize for having to come in just a few minutes late. As the presenter, that's...
Yeah, we're all good. We knew that was happening, and we ran a little long with Dr. Michaels. So in all honesty, it really kind of all worked out. So as things oftentimes do. So I am pleased to introduce to you all Dr. Sally Scoville as a professor in the School of Health Sciences and Wellness in the College of Professional Studies, University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. I have the privilege of working with Sally all the time, and it's a lot of fun. So Sally also oversees the Employee Wellness Program at UW-Stevens Point, which was awarded a Bronze Level Award from the Governor's Worksite Wellness Program. Her field of study includes worksite health promotion programs and designing effective interventions for community and corporate clients. She has published articles about developing experiential learning programs for students. Sally is also a faculty for the National Wellness Institute's 2 certificate programs in worksite wellness and is a board member for the Wellness Council of Wisconsin. She serves as a peer reviewer for the Building Healthy Academic Communities Journal, along with reviewing grants and research for other organizations. Sally has been working in the field of wellness for 33 years in a variety of roles prior to coming to UWSP. She is a Yoga Alliance certified instructor. We'll take a moment, hopefully. Completed training in resilience from organizational wellness and learning systems, certified as a mental health first aid instructor, Make It Okay ambassador, is completing a QPR Institute instructor certification, studied mindfulness through the Penn Resilience Program, and utilizes VIA character strengths to assist students to grow more resilient using their unique character strengths. Sally presents and consults to organizations nationally and are presented internationally as well. And Sally, it is a privilege to have you here. I will turn this over to you.
Well, thank you. I guess everybody can hear me just fine now. And again, I apologize. I didn't plan my calendar as well as I would like to have. So what I want to talk about today is, you might not think that this is a wellness issue, but improving communication and building resilience really is, because we know that a lot of people feel stress. And their mental health is really impacted when there's poor communication within an organization. I just got finished doing a training with a company that, how do you communicate with employees better to help them with their mental health was the issue that we discussed today. So I wanted to bring that up as part of my Wisconsin After School Network, and thank you for having me. So my next question is, what is your toughest communication issue? You can either put it, I don't know if I can see a chat. Somebody might be able to see that, a chat, or could somebody unmute themselves and share? What do you find are your toughest communication issues with your staff?
Time or face to face, Sally? Time for face to face.
Oh, time for face-to-face conversations. Okay.
Don't be shy, y'all. Different communication styles. Yeah, we were just talking about how different generations communicate in different ways. Like millennials oftentimes will text, where Gen Zers actually want face to face communication. That's what the research shows. Um, Staff not responding, balancing generational differences in communication.
Yeah, those are really good answers. So I had looked at, I noticed that you were going to talk about the generational issues. So I thought, okay, they're going to have that already, which is really great that you're bringing that up because there is a difference in the way that people want to communicate. So just today, I want to talk about equitable and diverse methods of communications, mutual respect through mutual purpose, building trust, and then also Kathy mentioned that I use the VIA character strengths, and I've given you a link that hopefully will be shared with you and how you can actually do a free assessment and have your staff do a free assessment to look at their character strengths. A lot of this came from a book, and I'll hold it up right here if you haven't seen it. I have been reading this book, and I've just finished Crucial Conversations. And it's a great book that really talks about how to communicate with people and get away from that, as they call it, the silence or violence, and not violence in a physical violence way necessarily, but the reactions that become overboard, defensive, those types of things, or getting people who just don't want to talk about what's going on. But I do want to bring up a piece for you that talks about mental health. So communication is so important in mental health because there is a big connection between mental health and work. That when you feel like you have a social support system at work, when you feel like you have purpose in your work, that really helps people with their mental health. And it also helps them communicate better when they feel like they have connection, relationships, when they have purpose. We also have that obligation to protect workers from physical and mental harm as supervisors and leaders. And for some work, there's not as much physical harm, where in your place there may be, just because you're dealing with children, they're out doing activities, but also to provide that mental and that psychological safe space to have the conversations. Forming connections, meaning and purpose, as I mentioned, and supporting growth. And how do you support the growth, either in skills or longer term, how do you support the growth of an individual? And so those are always really important things when the Surgeon General came out with their mental health report, especially as it involves the worksite setting. So one of the things in the Crucial Conversations, Patterson says, and his colleagues, that they call it the crucial conversation by when there's a high stakes, differing opinions, or strong emotions. And that might be hard for some people to recognize. So I gave you some examples from the book here that I really liked. You want a promotion, but your boss thinks you're not ready. Well, that's a differing opinion. If any of you have partners, there's always a differing opinion from what the way they want to run things, or maybe the way you want to run things, the way you want to spend money, whatever that might be. You and your coworkers are discussing how to change the company's failing marketing strategy. That's a very high stakes, because if the company is not being marketed correctly, then it could influence your job. Are there strong emotions? Your significant thinks you were flirting at a party. So again, what are those emotions? What are the types of emotions, differing opinions, high stakes, or strong emotions that you might deal with in your workplace are all things that would identify that this is a time for a crucial conversation. Why do they matter? Well, there's positives and negatives about both. They can accelerate building trust between individuals when you sit down and have that conversation, but you have it in a rational fashion without those high stakes, high emotions coming out, that it can really build trust. And I think that's one of the big things for the type of job that you're going to be doing, is building that trust between you and the people that are working with you. Creates that connection, which also helps to build trust, and it builds performance. So you want the people, yourself and others, to work better. So we can really look at organizational performance by doing this. The negatives are often caused by how people behave when they disagree with others about those issues. And you can think back at a time when that's probably come up. And the results of a crucial conversation can have a really big impact on quality of life. So when somebody's quality of life can be impacted, that can be a negative, but it doesn't mean that we avoid them. Can anybody want to put in the chat some time where you've had that crucial conversation and the problems have caused by how people behave when they disagree? Again, you can unmute yourself also if you want to share one. I know I could share plenty, but you're going to hear me for the next 30 minutes anyway. You can share a positive if you'd like also.
Hi, this is Heather. I know I've actually struggled with this quite a bit lately. Just when you try to give positive feedback or even constructive criticism to staff. So I'm not just in the summer, but I run a daycare year round. And if you're trying to, I notice the biggest issue I have is when I'm trying to share strategies or ideas. The teachers don't always take it very well. They think they're being negatively looked upon or that they're not doing a good job, instead of saying, hey, here's just a different idea of how to do things. This might be a different way that we can handle this situation. They immediately go into defense mode and want to argue or say hurtful things instead.
Yeah, that's that whole piece where it goes from silence to violence. Either they're not saying anything or they're disagreeing vehemently. So again, building that relationship first. The book has many more strategies, and in communications in general, there's many more strategies than I can cover in just a short time. But do you have the trust? And one of the things that it talks about is that, do people have the ability to have their say? Or is it just saying, here's what we're doing and why? Or do people have the ability? And sometimes there's not the ability for somebody to have input. But is there a place where they can have a stake in it? Like, this has to be done because corporate says so, but is there a different way we can implement it? What ideas do you have? So those are ways to think about that. That was good. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, you're welcome.
Great. So I just wanted to show you a cute little, so you might relate that this is just a funny little joke just to get you to lighten up. Whenever I get mad at you, you never seem upset. How do you manage your temper? Well, the wife says, I just go clean the toilet. And he says, well, how does that help? And she says, I use your toothbrush. It made her feel better. I'd say that's probably not the best way to handle it, but I thought that was a funny little way of having a crucial conversation, but maybe it doesn't work out quite right. So when we think about this, I've got several different steps to build communication. And this is a quote from the Surgeon General's work that says, create that environment where workers' voices are supported without fear of job loss or retaliation, and is an essential component of healthy organizations. And I think that really goes back to what Heather just said, is that you want to have their voices supported. And I know even at the university that I've said this before of her coworkers, yes, we're having these focus groups where people's voices are heard, but they're going to do what they want anyway. Well, do you feel like that, where it's not worthwhile saying it? Are you creating that? Or with your communication strategy, is there a part where workers' voices can be heard, where maybe they have a say in implementation or rollout or communication strategies, even though something has to be done a certain way? Those are ways that you can always look at creating that environment where people feel psychologically safe. And psychological safety has been something that's talked about quite often now, because this whole issue of people not staying with their jobs, they call it the Great Resignation, and now they're calling it quiet quitting. And we've talked about mental health as part of this. Well, they're finding that people have to feel safe, mentally safe, before that they start to share more. And one of the first strategies is to focus on what's important. So instead of thinking about eliminate the need to win, like my way's got to be right, what's the most important thing that you want to walk away with? What is the point that you're trying to discuss, and what do you want to walk away with? And so that's one of the things that I think is really important, is sometimes stepping back and saying, what is really important as part of this conversation? For this person to do what I want them to do, to accept my way of doing it, or are we trying to come to an agreement on the way to handle a camper? Is it a way to handle policy and procedure? What is that? So eliminate the need to win. And I'll have to admit, I find this in we can do this in our own lives too, where even with our significant, if we have children, other coworkers, what is the most important? We both want this outcome. How can we both get there, even though our methods might be different? Again, watch for those times when the conversation promotes that silence or hostility. The Crucial Conversations calls it silence or violence. I like the word hostility better because the connotation of the violence to me is more physical, but it's really that hostility. And I think, was it Heather, I believe, who described a situation where people get defensive and they back off and they're really going to start arguing their point. When we get there, that's that time to go back and say, let's eliminate the need for a win. And then also look for mutual purpose. What do both of you want out of this, or you in a group? What do you want out of this? The other piece is promoting diversity, equity, inclusion. Some people call it DEIB, DEIA, with accessibility. I don't know that it matters which letters we put. It's more about, are we hearing diverse voices? Are we including everyone's voice? And it's not always with equity. I believe that everybody has equal access. It may not be the same outcome for everybody, but are we listening to those voices? Are we making our conversations accessible to everybody? And the three areas that really come up in this DEI framework is really policies, programs, and procedures. What policies do we have that can help promote hearing everyone's voice? Are we offering programs where even the minority voices are heard and recognized? Because often the majority voices are often heard, but where can the minority voices be heard? And are we creating procedures that can really promote DEI? And this will also help build trust and help voices being heard. So these are some ways that we can look in this first area of building communication, some of our first steps. And I really believe in this promoting the psychological safety, making people feel safe that when they speak their mind, that they're not going to be addressed in a negative way, job loss, retaliation, or put down for their ways of thinking. Any comments on that, feedback? All right, we'll move on to the next one. So this is something that was brought up in the last slide, but it's going to break out a few of these, such as building mutual respect and building mutual purpose. Purpose is really important in building well-being in not just ourselves, but the people that work with us and the people we surround ourselves with. What is that purpose? Some of their staff may not find that this is their purpose, but you're all there to serve a group, and they're applying because they want to serve this group of people. So how can you find purpose in that? So when you start your conversation based on mutual purpose, what is the crucial issue? What is it you're trying to address? And Heather brought up a good point about performance evaluations. We want to address how people are performing at work. The crucial purpose, the mutual purpose could be, how do you see yourself performing at work? Where do you feel like performance at work would be adequate? And letting them have a voice a little bit first too. But the conversation also has to have mutual respect where views and feelings are treated. So again, you can see that a lot of these strategies are the same, and which I really appreciate. And when you look at communication issues, it's always seeking to find that shared goal. Checking our motives. Are we trying to win, or are we trying to collaborate? And I'm a big collaborator, so I love to collaborate. There's an acronym they use called CRIB, and I ran out of room to write it down. But when we create mutual purpose, are we creating a strategy where we are building crucial conversations? Are we building that respect? Are we building inclusiveness? And are we building, see, I've blanked out on my B now. Has anybody read the book? Commit to seek mutual purpose. So that's a really big one. That's one of the big pieces of creating that whole mutual purpose. Then also with mutual respect, that we have to respect the other person as a human being. We're not commenting when we do communication on their character. We're not commenting on their values. We just see them as a human being that has different motivations than we often do. So as we do that, are we again going back to committing to create that mutual purpose, recognizing that we all have a different reason that we approach an issue differently. So when we do this, finding that purpose behind a strategy that you're discussing. What do you need done? Why are we doing this? That shared goal. And also, can you brainstorm? So I think that's one of the important parts of it. Can you find new ways to approach an issue that's coming up? And a lot of people really enjoy doing that because they feel like their voice is being heard. We also don't excuse other people's behaviors, which is not respect. That's not what respect means, but we empathize that they have a different way of approaching things. And then also we can contrast. So this is a way, when Heather talked about performance evaluations, it's actually been discussed. How can we contrast? Here's what the job goal is. Here's what's desired, and here's what's not desired. And then asking the person, where are you fall on this spectrum based on the behavior or something that's not desired versus what's desired. And that way the person can have a voice. A lot of times you'll see that it comes up when you ask them to voice it. Brainstorm new strategies. Thank you. Yes. So those are really good strategies to use. So any questions on that? Did anything pop up in the chat? I thank you for helping me with my, as we call them, the blank brain sometimes.
Yeah, the chat is clear right now, Sally, but we'll
Okay.
keep an eye on it. I couldn't see it either when I was presenting, so.
Thank you. Other piece is trust. We have to recognize that all of us, we're all real people. We come to work, we go home, we have real issues, and that we're not robots. And the old method of saying, leave your personal life at the door, don't bring your work life home to your family, has never been really realistic. That our personal lives come with us to work. What happens at work goes home with us. And sometimes it sets up a really vicious cycle where we bring something to work, it makes work not go so well, so then we take that home, which then makes home. How can we start to break that cycle? And it goes back to one, mutual respect, but also trusting that the people that we work with have the same intentions to do a good job as we do. They're not just there to sabotage, or they're not just there to do their own thing. That trust is really how we want to view it. The interesting thing is it talks about being topic dependent. So being topic dependent, I might trust somebody who's trained in CPR to do CPR on a person that is having a heart attack, but I probably wouldn't trust them to do heart surgery on them. So again, what's the topic? If it's a person's expertise, then I probably have trust in them. So again, it's very dependent and it's earned over time. It can also be dependent on the situation. What situation? When there needs to be an emergency response to an issue that may be coming up that you may have to deal with in the types of work that you do, then there needs to be someone who is trained in that situation. We may not trust everybody to respond in the same way that a trained expert is. Also, deal with trust around the issue, not the person. So that again, it goes to seeing what the issue is rather than seeing the person as being deficient in something. And then also you go back to that whole slide that I just talked about. You build trust by establishing mutual purpose. So it goes back and builds on itself again. Any questions or comments as that?
Yeah, there's a comment. Heather's saying, I try to ask a lot of questions and get my staff to work through how they think they are doing, what they are doing well, and what needs improvement. Then work together to set goals that align with the expectations of the program. I try to let them do most of the talking.
That is a great way to do this. We could just let Heather finish off because that's it. That's it. She's got it. Can we let them look at their own performance? Can we let them talk about their own issues and then have a mutual conversation about how to build on that? That's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. It doesn't always work, unfortunately. I did see that one pop up. Yes, it doesn't always, but then can you step back at times when it's not working out and think, is there a different way to approach this? And sometimes there is, and it doesn't mean that we all become the best at communication. Issues never come up because none of us are perfect at this. So how can we step back some way and say, is there a different approach? And you may hopefully find one. Anybody else have a comment about building trust? Anything where you found where it's topic dependent, situation dependent, or somebody's had to earn trust over time? Strategies you've used?
I've worked in childcare for 24 years now, and one of the main reasons why I ever left a childcare center before I became a director was because I did not feel like either I couldn't trust the office staff, I felt unappreciated, or unsupported. And so I try really hard now, being in the position of being in the office, to have to show grace first. We are a Christian center, so our mission is to love Jesus, love people, and meet needs. So my main focus is to make sure that I'm meeting the needs of my teachers first, including personal needs. And it can be trying sometimes, but I always just try to love the way Jesus has taught me to love, and not to turn this into a Christian thing, but that's just what we do here, and to really emphasize that we are a family, and whether we're having hard times, and or if we're struggling, or there's issues between staff, that we need to go to each other in grace and in love first, and be understanding that not everyone is going to have an easy time, and we're all going to struggle, and sometimes the bad attitudes or the hurt feelings come from things outside of work, and it could just be a personal thing. But just really emphasizing just that we need to support each other. We're with each other more than our families half the time, and so we need to act like a family and support each other.
Yeah, that's such a good
And
point.
outside.
That is such a good point. And whether you say, from a Christian organization, how would Jesus love? To me, it also goes back to what I just said about having that mutual respect, that we see each other as
Yes.
true human beings,
Yes.
whether we see them from our religious standpoint or just from a human standpoint, that everybody's got the issues they bring with. How can we help support them over time? And it does get frustrating. I mean, I'm a college professor. When I see students come in, sometimes you're like, why don't you ever do your work? Why don't you do it? That's what my head starts saying. But then my voice says, how can I help you? And they respond to that more. So again, with our staff, how can we help them? So we deal with the trust around the issue, not with the person, recognizing that everybody brings something in, and do we respect them as a person, and that we know that they have to earn trust over time. Again, is it topic dependent? Is it situation dependent? That's a good point. Thank you for sharing.
One other thing that I found, sorry. One other thing that I found is that each person has specific, like, jobs outside of just managing their classrooms and their jobs that they have to do on a day-to-day basis. But like, we have added on a job title of social advocate. So we have a couple teachers that are really good with planning things and teacher appreciation, and making sure like birthday cards are sent out and anniversary cards, things like that. So giving other little jobs where they are given the opportunity to really show their strengths, and build up the team as well. So it's not just all in the office staff. It's not just all coming from us, but it's encouraging everyone to work together and build each other up. We have one that's really great at lesson plans. So even though I run, like, I'm in charge of like curriculum and things like that, I have another teacher that when we have new staff come on, they get to train with her, because she does such a great job with the curriculum that I can trust her to do that job. But that also gives her, hey, I am recognized that I am doing a great job in this area, that they're giving me more responsibility in a way that's fun and encouraging for them.
Yeah, that builds that mutual purpose too, because that way they feel like they're contributing to the organization, which is so important for people's growth, and to feel comfortable if there does come to be a communication issue. So we're building that resilience in our staff because we're building the trust in them. Great point.
Yeah, Sally, one other comment in the chat was about being vulnerable, right? When we can be vulnerable with our staff, sharing personal stories of struggles and growth, right? So then in your shoes, let me share with you X, Y, and Z. I think that's the intent of the comment.
Yeah, that's a good one too, because when they see us as being human, if we're the leader, the supervisor, whatever your title might be, when they can see that you've gone through it also, then I think that's really important. So to the person who shared that, thank you very much. And I think that really plays into this almost to the end of the four things: the communication, mutual respect, mutual purpose, trust, and then character strengths. This VIA character strengths, if you haven't done it, it's a free assessment that you can do, and they have strengths, and it takes about 20 minutes to do the survey. You could have your staff do it, but everybody comes up with strengths, and I work with my students with their top 5 strengths and how they utilize them. So again, you can do that. So your strengths are really important to having authentic conversations, because you can take those clashing strengths that sometimes a person has a strength in one area and another one has a strength in another area that maybe they don't seem to match as well, but how can you use that in collaboration? Problem solving. And that always builds with communication, and also recognizing people's strengths builds resilience. There's a book called Good to Great by Collins, and he talks about putting the right people on the right seat on the right bus. So first, is it the right people in the right seat, or are they even on the right bus? And that we use our strengths in individuals to have them do the jobs that they're good at. I would never make a good accountant. I'm not a detail-oriented person. I'd love to be, and I try really hard, but I find that I make mistakes. So I try to put things in place for that, but you would not put me in that type of a job. So again, what are the strengths I have that somebody else has that then I can use them to help me in a way that I'm not as good at? So again, how can we appreciate the strengths? And especially if you look at your teams, where are your strengths different? There's a lot of strengths assessment. I happen to like this one because it's free, but they have a lot of support materials around it also that you can use. And it's been very validated through the positive psychology from the University of Pennsylvania. We can also assess other strengths. And again, there's I don't know, and I'm not Catholic, but I just remember somebody sharing with me the St. Francis prayer, St. Francis of Assisi, I think it is, that there's the seek to understand rather than to be understood. And that's that part of, are we trying to win, or are we trying to understand either others? And that was one line that always stuck with me out of the rest of it, that we seek to understand others instead of trying to have them understand us. And then we can open up collaboration, communication. We can build trust, mutual respect, and mutual purpose. We can also build strengths when people can share their feelings and emotions. And we know that not everybody can even characterize their feelings or emotions. You know, that I feel bad. Well, can you tell me what that means? Do you feel physically bad, mentally bad? You know, trying to get people to share a little bit more. Then also, can you ask them respectfully about your demands to create solutions? So this comes from Fatima Doman, author of Authentic Strengths. And I really like the way that she talks about how we appreciate others. We look at their strengths, how we can use that in collaboration, how we can use that to build trust where people feel more comfortable sharing feelings and emotions, and then ask respectfully about what you are needing, and then come up with joint solutions. And I saw something pop up in the chat, but it doesn't stay up on my screen. So
Now, Kelly was making a comment, if using strengths, colors, etc., remember to keep it positive. I've had it used against me because I was different from my supervisor and it was seen as a negative that I was not the same as that person.
well, that,
So,
yeah, thank you for sharing that. That is not the way that we want to approach strengths. We want to recognize that, I mean, our world wouldn't move around if everybody was just like everybody else. We want those different strengths. We want those people that appreciate beauty and excellence, which is one of the strengths, versus somebody who may be courageous or brave, or somebody that has prudence. I have a love of learning as one of my top ones, and gratitude. So again, you want everybody to have those because we all work together that way. I'm sorry that your supervisor was that way. I'd love to see a supervisor that say, yes, we want to appreciate strength, and that's what I want you all to think about. So as we wrap it up here, when people have skills to establish and improve psychological safety, all verses perspectives are included and heard. So this is so short that it's not enough to give you all the skills. It's steps to think about. And there are a lot of resources out there that you can explore to really learn more about how to have those conversations. Again, I've used the book Crucial Conversations for part of this because I really like the steps, but there are so many steps sometimes I think I can't remember them all. And what I like is that the authors of the book always said there's two ways to start. The first thing to learn to look, are we in dialogue or not? Are we in that shouting match? Are we in that am I trying to win or they're trying to win match? Are we in silence or violence? Where are we? So always think about, are we having helpful dialogue or are we not? So they say that's one of the first steps. And then always make it safe to show interest in others' views, because when people don't feel safe, they're going to be attacked, they're going to be put down, it's maybe impact their job or their performance, then they're not going to feel safe. And so when we show interest in the ways others view their strengths, I believe it's Kelly who said, they didn't appreciate your different strengths. How can we make it safe to appreciate them as being different? And then those are some of the references I used. Any questions or comments? I appreciate you guys giving lots of comments.
Yeah, that was really great, Sally, and I think a really just good dive into how to have those difficult conversations with staff, and when we can open that door to dialogue, right? So part of this is translating it to like, how do we do this in retention with our staff and our employees? And so when we open that door to dialogue rather than shut them down, right? And so, or shut us down, whatever it might be, there's two sides to every piece of this. We have a better opportunity to keep them engaged with our program, not just because we need them, but we want them, right? And they need to be wanting to be there, right? Not just because it's a paycheck, but hopefully because this is really truly what they're being called to do in some ways. However you see that, right? Or they feel value in your program, and so now is the time. It is 11:38. We've got some time with Sally. If you have questions, now is the great time to answer or ask those questions in terms of that and what this might mean. As you were coming on, Sally, I was asking this group, I'm like, what is one thing they will take forward? And so I'll ask again, what is one thing from this presentation from Dr. Scoville that you might take forward and implement this summer or try to work with this summer as part of your recruitment or your retention of your staff? Don't be shy. It's a funny conundrum because I'm like, I know I've worked with youth professionals for almost 30 years in my career, and I'm like, we're really not a shy group. But when it comes online, it's like people just get quiet.
Well, I will tell you one thing, and I probably have said this already. I've already presented different things to different groups this morning, so forgive me if I said it to you already or I said it to them. But managers building a relationship with their teams and manager influence has so much to do with retention and recruitment of staff. The data is really clear, and I'm a data person. But there's a whole philosophy of how do we build managers as coaches, which is a very different training for our staff's well-being, and that really has a lot to do with people staying or going.
Yeah, super. Corey, I see you came on camera. You've got a question or a comment?
Oh, that's a lot of pressure, but I do want to say thank you. I am presenting in 2 weeks, and so a lot of this ties into my presentation. I think the trust and the connection with your staff is really important, and I really like, Sally, how you had said that the whole work-life balance thing is a myth now. I heard at a conference once that even trying to think of work-life balance it stresses people out, because as soon as you think you find that balance, then something else, hits you and tips you over one way or the other. So we always try and recognize that our kids are people outside of this organization, like camp, things like that. They come in with so much stuff. So do our staff. Our staff come in with all that outside stuff as well. So.
Yeah, I don't like that term work-life balance at all. I don't use it. It means that things are going to it's going to be right here. Yes, they're even. I just use, to me, work is part of life. So is my work life and my personal life. How are they interacting? And there's a person that I follow that they call it sway. How do you sway between the two? Because sometimes you sway one way and it's going to be an overload, and sometimes you're going to sway the other way. And it equals out in the end, but it's almost like a pendulum.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. I didn't mean to put you. I just saw you come off camera, so I
No,
just
that's
assumed you were gonna
That's
hop on.
okay,
So
Kathy. Yeah, we always say here the pendulum swings both ways. So, you're gonna have those really, really amazing times, but then there's gonna be that hard, challenging times, and just recognizing that it does swing both ways.
hmm that's a good thing to talk with your kids about as well, like your kids in your program, right? Because not everything works the way that we think it's gonna. I would tell you that 90% of whatever's in my head about how I think something's gonna go completely does not pan out that way. I'm like, it's like, but I was taking a walk with my wife the other day, and it was like somebody was on trail in front of us, and we were going around the lake, and I was like in my head, I'm like, we're going to the left, so do you want to stop? And she's like, we'll go the other way. I'm like, what do you mean? So it's just like, I'm like, great. I just didn't even, so we need to be prepared to be able to do that, to sway between the two. I love that comment. So, any other questions for Sally before we close up today? We have a little bit of time yet. Now is the time.
And I appreciate Kelly putting my crib in there when I had the brain blank. I see some comments, being vulnerable, sharing personal stories. Yeah, we saw that. Nice. So again, thank you for putting the character strengths in there, Kathy, because I really love the character strengths assessment.
I've done VIA strength finders, and I love it because so I've done several of them. That's one of them, and they're all like for the most part spot on in terms of. So my number one strength is I'm actually a learner, right? And so people who know me well, I like to do a lot of professional development teaching, but I also like to do a lot of reading, and right, that just and part of that is how it plays into my own personal and professional life. That's a big part of it. But I really encourage you to do strength finders if you have a chance to do it. It's just a fascinating look of like, huh, well, that makes actually a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And when you do it with your staff, you're able to balance out those roles. I think, when we build on people's strengths, we can always talk about opportunities for growth, but building on strengths sometimes is a really great asset to your staff team as well. So,
And I also see a comment that says it's better to get it right than to be right. That's a whole
yeah,
piece that Crucial Conversations talks about. Are we there to win? Are we there to have a dialogue?
right,
So I think that was
absolutely.
Corey. So thank you guys for sharing in that.
Super, 100%.
Anybody else? So
Well,
again, I think it's important to have this for our own staff's well-being, because we think of wellness sometimes as a diet and exercise, but our career well-being, our emotional well-being, in a way, our spiritual well-being, because purpose has a lot to do with spiritual well-being, to me, are all being addressed when we can have dialogue with somebody.
yep. Whatever your spirituality happens to be, right?
Right.
It's a pretty broad term and it's
Yeah.
intentionally broad. So,
Because it's not just, it couldn't be religious or it could be something else.
yep. Super. Well, Sally, we thank you for your time. Don't go away. Don't leave yet. We got a couple more things to do to wrap up. And before we go too far, I'm actually going to, before you all step out the door, a couple things that are coming up. We're going to share with you the YouTube channel so you all can go in not only for these presentations, but before we do that, in a moment, not yet, to quote Michael Brandwine, who Kelly Couthard and I know fairly well from our ACA day, our ACA experiences. We're going to pop up, one more poll for you all. We'd like you to take a couple polls so we can get some immediate feedback to share with the Marshfield Clinic and the Department of Children and Families. So the Gen Zers and Millennials in the group are going to hang on and help us do that, but I'm going to ask the Gen Xers to also go onto the Menti again. So give me a minute. Let me get this presentation in play. Kelly, could you put in the chat menti.com and I'll give you the code again? And the code is 1547 9629. And I'm going to share my screen. Oh, one moment. There we go. Okay, so we're asking, is the training meaningful? We're going to kind of get, and don't hesitate. We don't know who's putting in what. And so don't hesitate to put anything in there because we don't know who said what, but this feedback is actually really helpful for us with the network because we want to know that we're providing information for you. We might also send this out to you as well, and we want that feedback. And if you want to share anything with us in the future, feel free to kind of send that out. We keep that information confidential as well. It helps us provide you what you're looking to do. waiting for that one to bounce a little bit. And then I'm going to go on to the next one. Kelly, I'm looking at you to like give me some timing when you think we should move forward.
Yeah, I would say just give us a second. And I guess one of my questions would be, there are people on this call that might not be able to, because they're on their phones, might not be able to toggle between the both and do a Menti. So is there a way that they can give us feedback? Because we do have another session coming up in 2 weeks. Corey had talked about that a little bit. And we want to make sure that we are passing the information on that say, like, this was really meaningful, or, you know, strongly disagree because I thought it was going to be more tailored towards this. So we just want to make sure going forward that we are meeting the needs of who's all going to be here.
Okay, great. And actually, I don't think I actually have to share my slides. Can you see it, Kelly? Can you see the results when you're in it? So you don't have to see it in front of me?
I'm not in it currently, but another good way for us going forward so more people can see it is, I would say, make sure we put up the QR code so people can see it and get it on their phones too.
Yep. Okay. So you guys are all online. So I'm actually just going to like, and some people might hesitate because they're seeing those results in front of them. I'm actually going to go to the next question is I expect to make changes based on the training and content. I'm actually going to keep it off camera in the event of, and again, I don't know if you all can see it as participants on your end when these results come in, but I can certainly see them in that way. And so it might allow you to give some feedback without feeling really self-conscious about it. So.
And also, you could definitely email us. It's in the chat, but Wisconsin After School Network at marshfieldclinic.org. That's a good way to give us more info. We had someone say, like, as a participant, they can't see results after they submit their response. So that's good. So maybe that is good that they can't see the results because, you know, that's just for our info.
Hey, shout out to Paula Lauer. I didn't see you were on this call. Actually, I've known Paula for a number of years, so it's good to see you all. It's good to see you all on this call, but we happen to know her personally, so.
Yes.
Okay, I am moving on to the next question, hopefully, and I'm going to pick on Rachel a little bit. This next question is, the training was respectful, professional, and responsive to my cultural perspectives. But Rachel, is there a way to also maybe send this out for further feedback? Is that an expectation from the clinic that you would also send this out to collect additional data, or is this it?
Right now our process is to do it here, but I can take that back to Juan and see if there's some follow-up we can do.
Okay. That really helps. I think numbers have stopped bouncing. One more. Here we go. Should put the music back on, right? Okay, I'm going to move on to the last question. Is the way the information was presented met my learning needs? This is actually really helpful for us. Everybody learns in really different ways, especially in this online environment. We still continue to learn best practices as to how to do that best meets your needs. We also, the challenge with doing the polling this way is we don't also get like optional feedback. Feel free to send that to me. If you want to keep it confidential, I would suggest send that to me. I will put my email in the chat momentarily. I will keep that confidential if you don't want to share that with a wider group, but you want us to have that information, realize that this information is confidential. It helps us do our job better into supporting you in the work that you do as well. So as you all are finishing this poll, we really appreciate you hanging on with us to do that. I'm going to ask Rachel to put the YouTube channel in the chat, but we want to extend our thanks today again to Dr. Lindsay Bernhagen, Dr. Jennifer Michaels, and Dr. Sally Scoville for their contributions to today's presentations. If you have further questions regarding today's seminar series, please email the Wisconsin After School Network at the email address provided in the chat box. We're going to put a couple email addresses in here. More information about a series of professional development opportunities in addition to this learning series can be found in the Wisconsin After School Network website. I know that the clinic is in the middle of trying to transition that website, so maybe Jen, if you're available, do we want to use the chat address or just use the YouTube channel for right now?
Yeah, I would say you can access us via email, send us an email, and if you want to watch the recordings, go to YouTube. But currently our existing website is not being updated and we're building our new one. So the website is not a good source for current information.
Yeah, thank you. I will change the scripting from this point forward. So that was
it should be up by May, but at this point it's still in the build.
Super.
process. So yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Our next summer day camp series will be on Tuesday, March 21st from 8:30 to noon with scheduled breaks similar to today in between presentations. This second seminar will focus on stress, what it is and how we address it in camp programs with Rachel Sharon, a licensed social worker, planning resources for wellness again with Dr. Sally Scoville, and then creating a culture of well-being with Corey Zelazowski. Corey, I hope I got your last name correct, from the Northwoods Boys and Girls Club. We encourage you all to participate in the series as we continue to work to provide quality out-of-school time opportunities for kids and families. Thank you for your participation on today's webinar and for the work you do on behalf of the children and families in the state of Wisconsin. Now we will let you back with your day with 8 minutes to go. Feel free to hang on if you have questions. We will stay on the call for a moment, for several more minutes. Otherwise, I give you that time back in your day. Go do something self for you. Take 8 minutes to go do some gratitude for yourself and step outside in the sunshine while we got it. I hear there's more snow coming. So, yeah, March. It's going to be there. Thank you, everybody.